Hello and welcome back to Rage Gaming, and a pretty exciting one today. We've been lucky enough to play Nioh 3, its full release, a little early, and we're allowed to show you up to a certain point, which is Act 1. But obviously I'm going to be avoiding spoilers in this video. The plan is to give you a quick starter guide of some of the important things to think about, while also assuming you have some basic Nioh or demo knowledge. So you'll be fine if you're completely new. I just plan to get to the point on each topic and not provide you with useless information. So let's begin. The first thing that I want to highlight is a couple keybind changes, which I think are a really good idea. Under controls, you've got style shift and burst break separation. This is very simple. By having that separation on, you can style swap and also burst break separate from one another. So to burst counter or burst break, you just press R2 on a controller. Then to style swap, you'll have to hold R2. This means you're not forced to style swap when you go for a burst break, and I think that's important. Next, I strongly recommend auto looting, so go to basic game settings, and then you have item auto pickup. So much loot drops in this game, like unbelievable amounts. Having this on just means you're not manually picking it all up. Strongly recommend that. Everything else is preference, but I will highlight the fact that the camera speed feels really slow in this game. At like the default level, I turned both horizontal and vertical to max, and it feels a lot better, so consider that. By bringing yourself to any shrine and leveling up, obviously you can level up. As you can see, I can press left shift to reset, which will fully reset my character for free. So yes, don't worry about wasting points or a leveling order. There's other systems in play, like blessings. These can be fully reset however you like. So when it comes to these systems, you can invest how you want, maybe make a mistake and make changes later. To mention it though, weapons scale with 3 main stats, as we can see when we look at this weapon and you see the reference stats. If you want more information, I can press the middle button on my PlayStation controller to get more info and take a look at like the full information about each line. When I'm in my inventory, I can press triangle here and take a look at those stats and see what icons actually are. And obviously, when you are leveling something, you can see the affected weapon types. So in this case, the ones highlighted in yellow are going to be affected by constitution directly, where the weapons I've currently got equipped are outlined in red. So in this case, I can affect my 2 melee weapons that are currently equipped by leveling strength. Here's something that should not be ignored. Battle scrolls are essentially mini missions you access via shrines, so I can go on this special mini mission I've unlocked recently. But more important than that is the training ground version. As you can see, we've got options here for warrior, ninja, and Onmyo. This rewards equipment and unlocks to give me skill points. So simply always complete these as soon as they are available to you. As you progress later in the game, some incredibly strong unlocks come from these. Next, a quick word on equipment and how to make this a bit more manageable, because it's much like an ARPG, they're constantly dropping loot on you, it can be very overwhelming. In terms of weapons, you can filter by quite a few things, right? I'd recommend you filter weapons by level. Then we can literally just take a look at the numbers and go, oh, this does more damage than another weapon. Obviously, there's more that goes into it than that. But to simplify it initially, just equipping the highest level weapon with the highest damage is a great way to progress in the opening section. This will keep you using different weapons, so you can get a little bit comfortable with all of them. But before long, you're going to want to start investing in specific weapons. Let's say I find a pair of tonfa that are really good, I also really enjoy the weapon, now it's time for me to commit to a tonfa. Well, I don't want to swap weapons anymore, so it's a little bit different story. You reach the Eternal Rift, or the hub as it were, after completing the 3rd area, the one at the end of the demo. Inside there is a blacksmith who can dismantle items you don't want. Then you use the materials from dismantling to craft the weapon types you are committing to. So by that point, you can craft the type of weapon you're actually interested in, at least as an option. Another option then is obviously the armor. This is also good to sort by level, but to keep it as simple as possible, just look at the base defense. If the defense is higher, you're going to take less damage while wearing this. There's a lot more to this than that, because you've got special effects and what they do and how do they play into your build. Toughness, physical resistance, and all the different element and such resistances too, as well as what it takes to actually activate this stuff. But for the first chunk of the game, simply focusing on defense will mean you take less damage. You could look at toughness like poise, which can be handy, but when we get into like serious builds and specific drops, that'll become more relevant. So don't worry too much about it. Just make sure that your weight limit is at 70% or less, so it's not affecting your stamina in your gameplay. And obviously you can spend level ups to increase how much heavy weight you can take. As you'll know from the demo, you can offer up your gear at shrines as well to kind of keep on top of it so you're not being overwhelmed by all this stuff in your inventory. To do that, you go to preparations, make an offering. You can make a lot of offerings at one time, but to just show you, you make the offering, and just like that, I now get some amrita, which is essentially souls, as well as some other items depending on what I offered. So it's a good idea to offer basically everything you're not currently using or thinking of using. If there's anything you want to keep, then you can tag it to sort of prevent it from being offered. But early on, giving yourself more levels and power is going to be great, and then you can later on, once you get the blacksmith, consider are you going to offer the gear you don't want, or are you going to dismantle it. Now let's cover some key combat mechanics. Again, I'm going to assume you played the demo on Nioh before, but it should be fine. You'll know what poor ki management, aka stamina, looks like and feels like. You're attacking and you're out of stamina, and then you're vulnerable exposed. And it's something that new players of Nioh often do, because obviously after you attack, you're supposed to ki pulse when the light shines to recover some of the stamina that you just spent attacking. Then as you progress the game, you're going to get other methods to increase how much stamina you get back on a ki pulse, like doing the fluxes. But just try to always pulse after a finishing attack or a combo, even if you time it wrong. It's better to do it than not do it. So let's talk about the most important unlocks you can look at. For Samurai, I strongly recommend the first thing that you grab is deflect. This is essentially unlocking parrying, and you can parry most attacks in the game. By doing this, you actually restore ki, and you're going to build up your art gauge and even ninjutsu. After that, I recommend you unlock the high and low stance, which give you different movesets. Low stance is a lot more agile for the samurai and is actually the evasive option of the lot, where high stance deals more damage per hit but is a lot slower and is also more ki dependent. And as you quickly find, some attacks are tied to the stances, so you have to be in the right stance to do certain attacks. After that, obviously you want to look at flux and flux 2. You get more ki back when you pulse by making a stance swap when you do it. It's very simple. It just sounds worse than it is. So I attack and then I press R1 to ki pulse at the right time. Instead of just pressing R1, I also press R1 and square, or R1 and triangle, or R1 and X to swap stance. That is a flux. So as you can see, I'm low stance and I ki pulse, I'm going to swap stance. At the same time, I'm going to get more ki because I did that. And then flux 2 is the same thing, but you swap to a second stance in that moment instead of one. So as I attack, I ki pulse to the high stance through medium. And I do that just by sort of gliding across the buttons, ending up on high stance, or vice versa by going down. On the other hand, you have, of course, your ninja, which comes with ninjutsu, which you can absolutely dump out on targets and restores pretty quick, especially if you're using a samurai and regularly deflecting. There's only one thing that I really want to make sure that you unlock for this, which is this, evade. It's literally just a perfect evade. So where you're playing a samurai, you're going for a perfect parry. The ninja is using perfect evade to dodge the attack at the last moment. A lot of people are going to find ninja more forgiving because if you mess up the dodge timing, maybe you physically moved out of the way of the attack now. Whereas if you mess up the deflect timing, you probably get hit. Quick word on burst break and staggers, because there are some changes in Nioh 3. So burst breaks, it's that simple mechanic. Enemy does a red attack, you press your burst break button right as you're about to be hit, that's it. Now you build a lot of stagger, which is great, and you even mess with a ki. Enemy ki works differently. You stagger an enemy by avoiding their attacks, deflecting them, attacking them, all kinds of stuff. And during the full stagger, you get to punish them with a grapple or an execute, depending on whether they're knocked down, by just using a heavy. Now be aware that you can get a good few attacks off during that stagger time. You don't have to immediately do the heavy punish. Nioh 3, compared to the previous games, you got human enemies. They're not so easy to chain stagger anymore, because what they've done is they've given them like a full ki restore after a stagger and grapple. So just maximize your stagger time with a quick few attacks before you actually punish with the heavy. In regards to style switching, now ninja is great for its unique playstyle and the ninjutsu spam, especially if it's using an element the target's weak to. And again, people are going to find evading easier than perfect deflecting. So you can lean hard into that if you want, but I encourage you to swap regularly with your styles and experiment. Some fights just feel better as samurai, going for those parry timings just feels right. Whereas other fights, evade spam feels a lot safer and easier to abuse, and I think a lot of people are going to feel that way about most fights. I would just say, when you unlock some specific mechanics or skills for one style or the other, play that until you get used to it. Really focus something. Alright, as you'll know from the demo, Onmyo magic has changed. They're now tied to soul cores. So you have your yang position, you have your yin position. The yang position's all about summoning the demon, whereas the yin position's kind of a self-cast. So this could be a buff, or it could be some sort of attack. So like this one, instead of just being a self-buff, is a direct sort of thunder attack. I really recommend you slap these on and experiment as much as possible. Let's say you're playing in a fire area, there's a lot of enemies with fire. Well then just pop on a fire stop talisman. And then just keep this ticking along so you're taking significantly less fire damage. Maybe the boss is super fire related. An important one to think about though is the Kappa demons and their Luckbringer talismans. This is important because if you're going to be farming drops, having one of these active when you're killing something and it's dropping stuff makes it more likely to find those rare items. Otherwise, I just really want to encourage you to use your resources. Throw your ninjutsu, absolutely dump it out, and then fight and recover it and do it again. The same thing for your Guardian Spirit, the special Guardian attacks, which are different based on which Guardian's currently equipped, or, you know, using the living weapon timing. So you can do these charge attacks and just get incredible DPS and stagger value. And remember, when you take damage during this, it will mean you get knocked out of it sooner, but you don't actually take damage. And while living artifact does take longer to charge up than, say, a guardian skill, they come back relatively quick. And you're also going to collect a lot of spirit stones, which give you a little bit of amrita, which can help you level up. But importantly, this also builds a little bit of resource towards your next living weapon. So, you know, you could use one in the middle of a tough boss fight, then pop a couple of spirit stones intentionally, and then get another living weapon off. If you're having a real hard time with a specific fight, it is a cool trick. Alright, big topic that I want to be quick about. Exploration. Should you explore everywhere and do everything? If you want power, yes. If you want more power, yes. Many power systems are tied to finding a hidden NPC, an enemy, or items. And you're going to find that you overlevel content easily if you explore at a basic level, which is what makes bosses easier when you get to them. There are also other zones that are going to overlevel you currently, so you could have a harder challenge there by going there early if you want. As you'll have seen from the demo though, each zone has its own exploration level. Initially this can be a stat bonus like attack 2. Quickly level 2 is unlocked so you get to see the map's outline. Then you just see the whole area. And then you get to see where all the specific stuff is, like collectibles. The more you play in a zone and explore, the easier it is to find everything that's in that zone. And by doing pretty much everything in a zone, you will be overly strong for, say, the next section. If that's something that you feel you need to do, then it's an option. There's all kinds of stuff in the open world though, like the Scampus Cats, which you need to chase down to get secret loot and skill points. There's the Weasels, which are just sort of like flying creatures that make bell sounds. Shoot them down, you get some skill points and even other important unlocks. Obviously, you have the returning Kodama, the little guys that sit on top of the shrine. The more you find, the more elixirs you have to work with, which means exploring's easier, always a priority. The blessings you get are insane, where you're getting more heals or more healing from the heal. Damage or damage reduction as a buff after you heal. There's enemy bases. When you kill the final enemy, you get a key, and that means there's a lock room somewhere in the base, so make sure you find that. There's also secret skills. We have common, samurai, and ninja specific. This does have a capacity, and so they have different values. These change your experience with the game. So enduring destruction's an obvious one. After you do a burst break, the enemy takes more damage. And like I said, you can unlock new ways to deal with yokai realms, like performing key pulses by dodging. There's also spirit veins. I just want to mention that. You'll have found them in the demo but can't use them. The idea is you have a compatible guardian, but it's not actually that involved. You just have to unlock the guardians by progressing main story. And then you can use the spirit vein tied to that guardian. So the first one you get is the traversal option. Not long after that in Act 1, you'll get another one to break boulders, and then more in Act 2. You don't need the specific guardian even specifically equipped, it just happens once you've got it the first time. So the spirit veins are worth revisiting once you get these things unlocked. Other cool stuff are, say, the Blood Edge Yokai, which is a full-on boss. If people die a lot in one place, it seems to spawn one. This is definitely one of the tougher things in the demo. So when you find dead other players, the Revenants, you can kill them, and then the kill points you to the direction of his sign if you're looking for him. I've also heard the more Revenants you kill, the stronger the Blood Edge Yokai is when you summon him. You're also going to find side quests as a little exclamation mark here and there. Follow the short stories, often to multiple locations, and you will get skill points and other great rewards. There's also the Jizo 6 statues. They have their own blessing points, and those blessings actually modify crucibles. So they're a really good idea to go get before you do the crucible. You'll also find formidable opponents, just like mini bosses and such in the open world. And hot springs, which give you yokai tears as rewards. This is a special currency you trade with the special merchants for different valuable rewards, like new blacksmith crafts or even passive unlocks. Quick word then on the crucibles. Lesser crucibles are simply a gauntlet challenge, which is pretty quick, but the major ones, often tied to the story, are more like a classic Nioh level. When you're in a crucible, when you take damage, you can lose max health, which will need items or other resources to cleanse that off if you're not killing well. But what's really important here are the crucible drops, which are basically weapons that have this red skull symbol. So in the case of this one, we have double-headed slice. Bring your swords together and slash once at your enemy before attacking again. Only usable in low stance. You can see that we have a familiarity stat there, which is currently 0 as I've not used the weapon. And by using that weapon, killing stuff, gaining that XP, when I reach max familiarity, I can take that Crucible art and put it onto other jeweled katanas. So generally, Crucible arts are really cool. Max out the familiarity with that weapon, get the Crucible art, and put it on other weapons of that kind. Just keep in mind that a hammer Crucible skill can only go on hammers. But yeah, that'll about do it for this relatively spoiler-free guide for you. I hope it was useful. If it was helpful, do drop a like. And if you have any extra advice in the comments from maybe your time in the demo, then go for it, drop it in the comments. We'll be covering the game in depth though, so expect a lot of specific useful guides. But until next time, I've been Hollow, you've been you, and thanks for watching.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.